Heads up, there are spoilers for Squid Game Season 2 here if you haven't watched it already. Did anyone else watch that one film theory video 3 years ago about how Ilnam could be Gi-hun's father? And while this theory was debunked by the end of the video, it didn't stop this from being one of the most popular theories in the series. And now, 3 years later, after watching the new series, I was thinking, well, of course he's not his dad, but he could be someone else's. And that is the entire reason why I'm making this video. If you don't know, Ilnam was Season 1's Player 1, an old man struggling with his health that led him to die later on. What we find out is that he's actually the one running the games, and he wanted to enter the games as a final way out, leaving the frontman to be promoted and run the games in his absence. And in the original theory, there was a lot of speculation that Gi-hun was going to become the frontman after he left the games, especially if he was the son of Ilnam. And I think we've got the right formula here, but the wrong people. In Season 2, the frontman joins the games as Player 001 to keep an eye on Gi-hun. Because they're enemies. Right? Internet? Twitter? But it is interesting to see how both Player 1's parallel, and how this could be suggesting a relation between the two, especially considering In-ho didn't take on his old number as 132, which was his number when he originally played and won the games back in 2015. There's also a question about location. In the series, you'll find that there were a few people coming from different areas in Korea. We see it when they ditch the players from cars in the first season. In the original theory, people also talked about how Gi-hun and Ilnam lived in the same neighbourhood, or at least somewhere similar because of what he said in the marble game. And he ran into Gi-hun outside the store, although this could have just been to mess with him. What no one brings up though is how Jun-ho was also there as well, stationed in the same area as Gi-hun when he made the report about the games to the police. And not only that, he follows Gi-hun back home when questioning about his brother. Now, I'll give you the fact that he did go drive to see his brother, but we didn't see how long that drive was. It's possible that In-ho lives close by as well, especially because it seems like both sons remained in close contact with their mother, as she gets panicked about radio silence from him to the point where she calls his brother to check on him. And that's when Jun-ho realises that his brother hasn't been back to his apartment in apparently weeks. It's only recently In-ho has dropped completely off the map. It's a part of the plotline I think a lot of people forgot early on because it's easier to say the front man was always there rather than considering the possibility that he wasn't. Which means that the front man was only recruited to take over the games from Ilnam. Which is a lot of responsibility and trust to put on someone, especially if you want them to carry on your legacy. Doesn't it make more sense that the person he wanted to hand it down to was related to him? Someone he already had authority over? Someone like his son. But then why? Why would he let his own kid play in the games? You see, I don't think he let him. I think he requested it. Which is terrible parenting, I know, but does it seem like he'd be a good one? Is it so hard to believe that once this man realised he was getting old, he started seeking out someone else to run the games, and his mind went to someone he knew he could give purpose to? Someone he knew was in a rough spot, especially if we take his ill wife into account, and Ilnam knows that if he wins, he'll be able to convince him to join, because he would be desperate enough to do so. There's a reason that Jun-ho has never and will never get into the games, and that's because he's police. Seriously, if you're hosting illegal games, the first people you'd want to target are the people down on their luck, known to be drunks or criminals, people that would easily get turned down when asking for help. It doesn't really work with a respected member of the community, and in the games, why would you take that risk? Especially when it would be so much easier to target In-ho. And it makes sense. It's the reason why I think Ilnam would recruit one son and not the other. Once again, if we look back at the film theory video, the reason that the Gi-hun is his son theory doesn't work are all the reasons that the frontman is his son theory does. The memories when Ilnam mentions his kids consist of older kids who would have remembered what he looked like. Gi-hun sees the old man's face throughout and makes no comment. However, when the old man runs the games, he wears a mask, meaning when talking to In-ho, he would have had a mask on and it wouldn't have been clear who he was. Or at least he could keep that a secret until he trusted him. Il-nam also mentioned having multiple kids, which would be more than one. Considering how we saw Gi-hun and his mum were living, it seemed like he was an only child. But who we know who does have a brother is the Frontman. And finally, we have the milk. The funniest piece of information in the show because it made theorists go crazy. Il-nam said early on that his son couldn't drink milk, and this was after Gi-hun said that he couldn't drink milk either, which made the theorists flip out at the time. So much so that this moment was referenced later, the Frontman saying himself that he couldn't drink milk. But was this just a reference? Il-nam has said that Gi-hun reminds him of his son at times, and when talking about these characters, the description we're given for Gi-hun and In-ho was that they're two sides of the same coin. Very similar in a lot of aspects. And when Il-nam mentions the similarities, does he mean when his son was a kid or in the game? Because, reminder, In-ho won his game, and yet when it came down to it, it didn't help. Much like Gi-hun, he went back home to have lost someone. And that was the push he needed to believe in the against humanity ideology. Which leads me to my belief on what actually happened in 2015. Picture this. In-ho was going through a difficult time. His wife is both ill and pregnant, which puts her in a position of possibly dying in childbirth, if not before then. Il-nam, In-ho's father, knows this, and is also met with the realization that he himself is getting too old to run the games and would need to find someone to take over. Naturally, he wanted it to be one of his sons, and when choosing to pick between the police officer or the one doing bad financially, it became an easier pick of who he could manipulate. But how can you convince someone who acts so selflessly to the point where he gave his own kidney for his brother to run a corrupted, torturous operation such as the Squid Game? Well, you let him experience it. The worst side of humanity. Bring him through hell and back so he sees why the games were so important. So, anonymously, Il-nam had the salesman approach In-ho, and in order to pay for the treatment, he joins the games. And he wins, but not without the sacrifice and the pain and the bloodshed that we see Gi-hun experience when he won the games the first time. When he got back, his wife and unborn child were dead. And that's when Il-nam revealed that he was the one behind the games, that he was testing his son to see if he was capable of running such thing. As well as that, he made him see his perspective of humanity, convincing him to help the games continue. From that point on, In-ho helped his dad run the games while also maintaining a low profile in his life, which is why we see him in that small apartment huddled away from everyone. That is until 5 years later where he gets told he's being promoted, as Il-nam decides to join the 2020 Squid Game. But what do you guys think? Are we onto something here? Thank you guys so much for watching. These videos are always fun to make, and it's great to know that you guys enjoy them as well. Your support for this channel is why I can continue to keep making them, so I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys so much to whoever has subscribed. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.